So today, again, what we're going to level set on is the Asset Core product, so FootPrints Asset Core. There are two FootPrints products. One is the Service Core, which is the service desk. The other that we're going to talk about today is the Asset Core, and this really talks about asset management on your devices. As you can see on this slide, there are many modules that make up Asset Core. You'll see during the demonstration kind of how these all plug in, but what I'll talk about initially is the devices that come into your environment and that kind of that full life cycle, cradle-to-grave, managing of the devices is really what Asset Core is going to allow you to do. So you may get the laptop in, the desktop in, you may need to lay your corporate image onto that device. Asset Core has a tool that's going to allow you to do that. As the days of that device in production go on, you may need to do things like update the software. So, of course, in your image you had software, time is going by. You're going to have to update the software. You're going to have to update the patches. You may want to uninstall software. You may want to do the remote control session. So these are all aspects or functions that Asset Core is going to allow you to perform on that device, cradle to grave. We talk about a few of the initiatives, this intelligent software management. So when you think of that, almost think of it as we kind of talked about deploying software, but there may come the situation where you need to uninstall software. This intelligent software management allows you to do that. If you want to monitor, so let's say I've deployed out a for-fee application. It's a hefty fee. Maybe it's $500 for the application. So I don't want that enterprise-wide. I want that on a subset of machines with the intelligent software management. You're going to be able to monitor that application, see if it's actually being used, what that rate of usage is, and then make some decisions if maybe I gave it to a department or an individual in a department, they've since left or no longer assigned to that project, so they don't need that software and they haven't used it for 6 months, 8 months. That's a candidate for you to go ahead and remove and have that available for the next person, as opposed to buying additional licenses. So the monitoring of applications, the prohibiting of applications, and of course, deployment and removal of the software are some of the functions that fall under the intelligent software management. The remote control and direct access. So the first one's kind of self-explanatory. From the Asset Core console, I'm going to be able to do a remote control session with an end user. So it's just like I were sitting in front of that machine. You can configure that to allow the access, etc. But the point is I can do that remote control session from the Asset Core console without bringing in other utilities to perform that operation. Now, the direct access one is a little bit different because what that allows me to do is real-time connect to a machine and see the C drive. Maybe I need to delete files, add files. I can see the services. So in that instance, I may want to stop. Maybe I have a service that has gone rogue. I need to stop it. I need to restart it. From the Asset Core console, you'll be able to connect to that device and then make those types of decisions. The other thing you see here is the integration with ITSM. So what that means is I'm able to integrate any of the data points that I've captured with Asset Core and do integration with my ITSM application. So if you have Service Core, so I have the service desk in place today. When a user enters a ticket, I'm going to be able to, from that ticket, launch and do some of these functions from Asset Core. Maybe it's the remote control session that you need to do. Maybe you need to push software. Maybe you just need to look at the inventory. Those functions are now available from your ITSM application. So there's the integration with Service Core as well as the Remedy Force service desk. Patch management. So a lot of people turn the switch on for WSUS, and it does, you can kind of see at the bottom what WSUS is doing, but what the patch manager inside of Asset Core is going to allow you to do is, on top of what WSUS is doing, I'm going to be able to patch some of my third-party applications. Now, do we know about every application in your environment? Probably not, but we're going to do the inventory. We're going to be able to see with the patch, we're going to be able to scan and see what we are able to natively patch. And then if something falls out of that realm, you can still get the patch payload, if you will, whatever that file is, from the vendor and send that through our application management and still patch the machine. It's just the fact of whether I'm doing it natively, i.e. my scanner is going to be able to pick it up, or I'm going to have to build a package for it. Finally, my financial management. So what this allows me to do is, because really Asset Core now starts to be a repository of all my assets that I want to manage. So what you'll see is the ability for me to put in depreciation schedules, for me to determine if an asset is deployed, if it's retired, if it's on order. Those type of financial data points you'll be able to capture inside of Asset Core. You'll be able to enter how much you paid for an asset, did you buy the warranty, etc. So it gets pretty exhaustive with respect to that financial aspect. Okay, so at this point, let's go ahead and move into the demonstration. Just going to switch screens here. Okay, and I'm going to collapse my console down here, so give me 1 second. Okay, so I've come into the FootPrints Asset Core product. Over here on the right, you can see I'm in as admin, and we'll just lay out this screen a little bit. So on the left, I'm clicking. On the right, it's the verbose, if you will, for whatever I've clicked on the left. So here I've landed on that home entry, and on the right I'm able to see a few things. So I have my advisories. I can see who's connected, any of my updates that have occurred, my recent connections. I have activities. Again, this is scrollable, so quite a few things, activities have occurred. And over here on the right, upper right, I have some dashboards. Now, these dashboards are interactive. I can go through the list just by hitting the arrows, but they are also interactive. So here I've landed on the operating systems. I'll just double-click, and quickly I can see what my mix of operating systems are. Again, devices that have my agent out there. So you'll see some Windows 7, some the Mac. There's a Mac machine here, 2000 server, 2003 server, 2008 server. So a good mix of operating systems, if you will, that have my agent already deployed. I'm going to collapse that. The other thing you'll notice in the lower right-hand side of the screen, and these are helpful tools as you're getting used to Asset Core, because if you notice, if you look on the left and I were to ask you to peruse and find me a device, you may be like, well, I'm not really sure where to look. Well, that's where these come in handy. So I'm going to go into the wizard mode first. So I have wizards that basically step me through any function that I need to do in the console, and these kind of map back to those modules that we saw before. So one of the first things after I do a discovery, I may decide, okay, I need to roll out the agent to those devices. So you'll notice there's a wizard for my agent rollout. If it's the first part of the Cradle-to-Grave, if you will, it could be that you're receiving a machine in and you need to run through the deployment of the operating system. You'll notice that you have this OS deployment wizard. The point here is it's stepping you through the paces that you need to perform any of these functions. Patch management is here, so is application management. Now, if you contrast this, I'm going to hit the Instant Expert. What this is launching into now are tasks that I may want to carry out. So I may want to deploy software as an example. So as I click Deploy Software, you'll notice that it's taking me in my console off of that home screen and into my packages. So it's going to step me now through what I need to build up to deploy a piece of software in the environment. And you'll notice here as well that you can see what the steps are. So again, at this point, you're really just walking through those steps. Okay. Here, let me just go back to that Home tab. And that kind of lays out this first screen, if you will. Now, there's several modules that we can cover. I mean, you can walk right down the list, but let's assume that we want to do a discovery. And so, again, I could hit one of these modules from the wizard or the Instant Expert, but I'm going to dive into the console so we can see really quickly a couple things. And we'll get out of that part. If I were to just right-click on that Asset Core, you'll notice as well that wizard is still available for me here. So I'm going to click it just so you can see what we can build up. I'm choosing Configurable at this point. I'm going to hit Next. And then I'm going to do a new scan configuration. And really, you're able to see, in addition to the Windows machines, which we would be utilizing WMI SMB for the protocol, I can go out there and look at Unix, Linux, Mac via SSH, my printers, routers, switches via SNMP, my hypervisors with SOAP and WMI. So we can get very exhaustive about what it actually is that we discover. I'm going to just hit cancel at this point. And then when I open this, what we'll see are, of course, the discovered devices. And you'll notice here that there are some icons presented back to me. So graphically, I can see really quickly, oh, that's the Linux box. I can see the Penguin. I can see the Windows on a few of these. This one happens to be a switch, but there are icons representative of what's being discovered out in the environment. Again, just to quickly let you know which is going to be able to receive an agent and then which of those can. So anything with SNMP is not going to be receptive to an agent, whereby the Linux, the Windows, the Macintosh, those are all receptive. Okay, so here we'll just minimize that down, and I'll show one other thing here under the configurations. You'll notice I have several built up there, and all that means is you can be very specific about what you want to discover. So you may want to go out there and just look at a certain subnet or even just a certain IP. That's configurable. You may want to look at a certain, like the VMs that came up. So I only want to search or discover my virtual environment. So you can be very segmented about what you discover. Okay, so here I'm just going to collapse that back down. So if you go kind of progressing through, so here I've gone out, I've done a discovery. Now I want to take a look at what that looks like, let's say, across the infrastructure. So here I'm going to hit device topology, and you'll notice there are several topologies available to me. I'll choose the first one, which is asset core topology, and what that means is anything in my environment that has my agent on it is what's going to appear under this asset core. And again, I have the icons there. The other thing, the red, just means not connected. I've got the green, which means it's an agent. You'll notice some of the greens have a solid screen, which lets me know really quickly that's a physical device, versus this open screen, which means virtual. So again, I can make or come to a lot of conclusions from the icons that are represented in this specific view. If we contrast that to my network topology, what you'll notice here is if I did the discovery and I was looking over certain segments, let's just populate one of these, it gets exhaustive too. But here really quickly I would be able to see any of the endpoints that are coming into a certain IP. So in other words, my network topology. My last view here is the connectivity. So how are things connected? So we were able to see with that scan that I can look for SNMP devices or my switches in the environment. So here quickly I can see I have a couple switches, and we'll just open up the one. Let's drag this over a little bit. So there I can see into this 3300 XM switch I have many devices connected. So again, it's just read-only information at this point, allowing you to see that topology. These don't require the agent. So if I am looking at network topology, connectivity topology, that's all agentless. The asset core, you'll recall I said, was anything out there that has my agent on it. So point is, I'm able to get a lot of information just by doing that initial asset discovery. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and collapse that. I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit because there's a couple buttons I glanced over intentionally. But this first one is a search. So I may not have a good idea about where something resides in the console. This search is going to allow me to put anything here. So if I kind of back out, I'm just mousing over. You're going to get that context help, kind of allowing or enabling you to enter some keywords there. Or I could go to this advanced search and get a little bit more specific.